ABC, right?
Yeah, ABC.
Okay.
It's Jackson 5, ABC. 1, 2, 3, you know it.
So, you learned it?
Yeah, I learned it.
Okay.
So where are we doing this though? Well, what's the point?
I'm making a podcast and I'm talking about the three realms of thought, the private, the common space, and the other private one. So it's 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah, but I'm sorry, but it's the 1, 2. It's ABC. The 1, 2, 3 is just it's in the song, but it's ABC.
Oh, so this is not a good pick?
No, because it's ABC. And then what? Have you heard the song? It's 1, 2, 3. But that 1, 2, 3 is just in the chorus. It's ABC.
Oh, excuse me. Mother, I'm off to Oxford to write my PhD dissertation
about
ABC. Bloody Jackson 5.
ABC. The song is ABC Jackson 5. It's about school.
Oh, there are going to be 5 of them. 5 PhDs. And it's
yes,
for Janet.
But it's ABC.
You know what? I'm the freaking expert on conflict resolution and anger mitigation and all that stuff. So if you don't like it, you can go and stuff it, boy.
ABC!
Asshole.
The Aikidians. Aikido, conflict resolution, and the general practice of not being a jerk.
Chapter 1. Fighting for Territory. The byline of this podcast is false advertising if I've ever seen one. I started Aikido barely 6 months ago and immediately regretted it. It turns out that one of my son's friends is training there, has been for a while now. And so he spends an afternoon in my living room, munching on pizza, flashing his braces, and a couple of hours later, he slams me down on the mat like a rag doll. His dad is one of the instructors in the dojo, so he also gets to swing me from my tail whenever the mood takes him. And to add insult to dislocated shoulder, my son has now joined the party and is training in the dojo too. Needless to say, my otherwise docile progeny becomes very enthusiastic when facing dad in the dojo, which is pretty careless when you consider the fact that I'm still the one who has to drive us home. So, why do I keep doing it? How has my life strayed so far from those of the playboy billionaire I was always meant to be? Are Aikido bottoms really skirts or just very uncomfortable pants? And last, but not least, why is there no decent coffee in America? All worthy questions, all will be answered in time, except for the coffee one. That will simply have to remain one of life's great mysteries. Some introduction of Aikido is due, of course. Unless you're big fans of Steven Seagal, there's no particular reason why you should have heard about Aikido, nor appreciate its unique approach to conflict. So, without dumping here the whole Wikipedia page, let's just say that Aikido is a relatively modern martial art developed back in the beginning of the 20th century in Japan. And the father of this discipline, Morihei Ueshiba, or O-Sensei, Great Sensei as he is often referred to, had some interesting ideas about what it means to practice martial arts. He said, more or less, that the goal of Aikido was to resolve conflict while inflicting minimal damage on your opponent. Let's repeat that. O-Sensei developed a martial art that was meant to hurt your opponent as little as possible. This is a very interesting idea. Well, at least to me it is. But I think it packs some heavyweight discussions. The kind you don't drop on your listeners less than 5 minutes into the first chapter of your podcast. So, instead of analyzing what was going through O-Sensei's head when he was developing Aikido, let's visit a closer, more accessible realm. Let's look into our own heads right now and see if we can learn something about conflict and negotiation. I spend much of my time in the nastier corners of social media, and regretfully have become a little paranoid. Every little comment online seems to spark a fight these days. No issue is too small to start hurling insults at one another. Now, I just said that Aikido may be unique in the sense that it tries to minimize the damage we do to our enemies when we confront them. This seems like a pretty innocent piece of information, but somehow, trying to talk about negotiation, de-escalation, and the likes, it made me a little apprehensive. First, this was the first decisive statement I made that did not refer to my personal experience of the world, but rather to concrete information concerning a third party. We will suggest why that may be a problem in a moment. The second thing is, and we might not get to it right now, is the fact that I touched on the subject of how we manage conflict, how we deal with enemies. This, I believe, can tick off a lot of people, but we'll get to that later. So, about moving from my private tale of Aikido to a report on O-Sensei's ideas. Like we said, this is the first time in this chapter that I refer to something that is not my own subjective experience, meaning it is the first disputable statement made here. When I say I regret taking up Aikido, for example, you may believe me or not, but it would be quite difficult for you to argue with me. Regret is something I feel in my own personal head. I am the only one who has access to it, and so, most of us instinctively, know that it is something they cannot dispute. Well, there was the coffee thing before that, but that's not something anybody can argue with. So, the moment I refer to a matter that is accessible to others, meaning not my private ideas and feelings, somebody may find my statement wrong, possibly upsetting. A subjective opinion, like we just said, is mine and mine alone, and so I am, generally speaking, the highest authority on it. Anybody claiming otherwise would look like a fool, unless they know me extremely well, enough to know what's in my head better than me, which is possible, but rare. However, there is another way to describe a subjective opinion. We can describe it, from our point of view, as confined to my private mental space, but we can also describe it as not intruding on any other space. We can draw a Venn diagram if need be, but I think it's pretty straightforward. A private thought, a subjective statement, gives me some defense against dispute. That's one way to look at it. But another way is to see a subjective opinion as giving others peace of mind. More technically, when we interact with others, there are three distinct spaces we can relate to. There is my private space, my head, where I am king. I decide what to think, how to think, and when to think it. In the same manner, the other person has their private space, which makes two. And the third space is everything in between, the common space, the one we both have equal access to. And like all common resources, at a certain point, we start fighting over it. If we talk about a well of water as a common resource, for example, then that's really easy to understand. If you take more than your share, then I have less to drink. Ah, living is good, my simian brain says. Dying of thirst, bad. And then we fight. But, whoa there, cowboy, you might be saying. The common space of ideas and opinions is infinite and amorphic, and definitely not as easy to quantify as a limited supply of water. True, but do we actually perceive it as such? For the most part, I think we don't. If we're talking about the simple interaction between two people, then usually there will be some common physical space that will define that interaction. A seat on the bus, a common living space, maybe some business decisions. These confines may not be clear and immediate as water supply, but they're not very hard to imagine. You say you are disabled, then maybe you think you deserve the bus seat more than me. I say I can't stand paisley, then maybe I want to decide what pattern our joint curtains will be. You say we should be careful with our investments. Maybe it means that you'll oppose me in the next board meeting. So yes, the realm of thought and opinions is endless, but we do have a natural gift to translate it into real-world confines and sow the seeds of real-world conflict. This tendency is not necessarily bad. We do, after all, live in the real world, and being able to foresee possible conflict is not a bad skill, but it does have its drawbacks. So, where were we? In Japan, the beginning of the 20th century, where O-Sensei came up with the idea of not chopping your enemy into little pieces, or at least that's how I presented it. So, let's say you are a Japanologist, if such a thing exists. You have a PhD in Japanology or Japanalism or whatever, and most of your self-esteem comes from the fact that you know everything there is to know about Japanese culture. And now there is this ignorant upstart on the internet who's presenting the principles of Aikido, a respectable branch of Japanese culture. Well, there is only so much respect to be had on this planet by knowing things about Japan. If ignorant upstarts start taking up some of the space, what will be left for experts like yourself? This is quite a primitive thought, I agree, but a lot of decent people will have it. They may ignore it, quash it, scold themselves for having it to begin with, but I believe that for many of us, this is default. If I let people occupy our common space, soon there will be no space left for me. And as a result, every statement or action we take in the common space is potentially triggering to others. Every step we take can land us in what some person may consider their own turf, their piece of influence on the common space. Think about your average bureaucrat, that person who insists you fill the form with a red pen rather than with a blue pen. They can't prove to you that a blue pen is problematic, but they do know that it is their turf, a piece of the common space in which they are the final authority. Telling them a pen is just a pen, regardless of color, does not challenge their views on ink. It challenges the territory that they have carved for themselves in the common space. So, after painting this grim image of human interaction, there is the question of what we can do about it, at least on the most immediate, tactical level. That's a deep and wide question, but we can start with a simple example and take it from there. And the example is that most of us have been taught that equivocating our ideas and statement, to a limit of course, is good form. Saying "I think" or "in my private opinion" paints us as modest, self-aware, and in some cases when we are wrong, for example. I'm just guessing here, mind you. Personally, I don't remember ever being wrong, but I heard stories about people who were. So when we are wrong, putting some limits on our self-confidence makes us look less foolish. I think that's true, but if we go back to turf, territory, and the common space, then this kind of behavior reflects upon us and our image, but it also impacts our surroundings. Showing reservations, saying we are not 100% right, confines our opinions and statements to our personal space, the space of our personal thoughts. However, when we assert ourselves unequivocally to the world, we claim that our thoughts are facts, that they are true anywhere, whether it's our personal mind or in any other space. This, in turn, makes a claim on some territory in the common space of thoughts and ideas, and some people may consider that space theirs and perceive our confidence as an attack on their assets there. So, by presenting our ideas as personal, subjective, rather than absolute truth, we are not only behaving nice, but we also limit our intrusion on the common space, that of shared opinions and ideas. And by doing so, we minimize the threat others may feel by our behavior. Less threat, less reaction, less conflict, more listening. So, what we may call modesty is not only a tool of self-betterment directed at oneself, it is also a tool of negotiation and peacemaking that can realize substantial gains in the real world. Oops, let's do that again. Modesty, mildness, not all guns blazing or whatever you want to call it, is, in my personal opinion, see what I did there? In my personal opinion, that is not a prop. Not something to make us feel more refined or cultured. It is a real way to impact the world around us. So, checkmate, suckers. I made all of you into soft-spoken Buddhist monks, and I even made you think it was for your own good. And it all took less than 20 minutes. Yeah. Then again, some of you more independent souls out there who were not completely charmed and persuaded by my eloquence may have taken a look at the world around us, and the world around us is saying very loudly and very clearly that I am dead wrong. This is, and has been for a while now, the era of the loud. Never blink, never apologize, trample all opposition, never be anything other than 200% right. That's how you make your way in today's world. There is very little evidence to the contrary. And if you feel that this MO is working well for us, that we never slept better, and that we're all headed in the right direction, then yes, now would be a good time for us to part ways. If you don't, then stick around for the next episodes. We might get somewhere. Who knows? And by the way, 10 minutes ago, I said... Wait. I have it recorded. I said...
The second thing is, and we might not get to it right now, is the fact that I touched on the subject of how we manage conflict, how we deal with enemies. This, I believe, can tick off a lot of people, but we'll get to that later.
And as some of you may have noticed, I never got to the second point. So, second point, second episode, sounds promising. Until next time, breathe, hydrate, watch those macros, and visit our webpage. We like the attention.